When you are a true serial visionary, you need to embrace it, admit it to yourself, call yourself a workaholic, whatever you want to call it your identity. But I promise you, when that laptop and that phone don't need you anymore, it's a very pivotal time after you've gone on about a 6-month vacation. Go enjoy your vacation, but come back and have something to do.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I am your host, Rob Schultz, and today I'm excited to bring you Jess Stewart. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to have you because I got to hear you talk. You go around all over the country and talk about your experience and your success as a business owner. And I have to tell you that it's so authentic. I mean, I hear a lot of people that will talk about their journey as a business owner, and they kind of skip the hard parts. And you didn't do that. I mean, you gave it to us like super real. And I've been dying to have you on the show so we could have like a real conversation about what it's really like, to start something literally in your kitchen, grow it to an international level, sell it, and all the other stuff that goes along with that I have a hard time getting people to talk about, but you're going to talk about it today, right?
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Awesome. Well, very good. Well, so Jess, I remember you talk about, you grew up in a military family on a working ranch, which, we're here in Fort Worth. There are a lot of ranches around here. Very few of them are actually working anymore. I think all the lifestyles of the rich and famous folks have come in and bought all that stuff out. I don't know for sure whether they're working on a profit or not at this point, but you were on a working ranch, and that's where you got your chops. Is that right?
That's right. So the family still operates today. I'm from a multi-generational ranching family, cow-calf operation. I'm from the Sierra Nevadas, is where the headquarters is located, and my brother currently runs it today very successfully. And yeah, I can't say that there's a lot of people from what, my background and where I'm from and how I was from. So I do think it adds to my story and my uniqueness. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm like all of us, we're the sum of our experiences. And so your experiences were unique, I guess you could say, right from the start. How do you think that that sets you up for success as an entrepreneur and business owner?
So if you'd met my father, no was not in the vocabulary. Can't was not in the vocabulary. It still isn't today for me and my brother. I do think that there's a portion of that, where it was instilled in us so hard that sometimes we have to back it off, right? So as a serial entrepreneur and a serial visionary, man, I can run a team ragged in about 60 seconds, and I look around the room and I'm like, what just happened? Like, this isn't that hard. So I think the way that we were raised was extremely authentic cowboy that you don't see anymore. We did not have cell phones. Now, granted, this will age me, but cell phones weren't really even out yet. Satellite phones were, but we had one of those for emergency purposes only. I don't think our parents loved us that much because we left for college, and then they got television. So I grew up of the old TV with the knob that you had 3 different channels. But the point of it was I had an extraordinary childhood. I had great parents. I had a great family. I had so much support and love for pretty much whatever my brother and I wanted to do. But at the end of the day, guys, we had to work, and it was not an enabled, entitled type of childhood. It was, you were expected to be a part of this family. It was part of your job. And then we were expected to work that way. So I grew up doing that at a young age and doing things that most kids probably have just never seen. Grew up in really rough, steep country. and running, a cow calf operation. There's cattle kind of everywhere, but not on flat lands. So
Mm-hmm.
our summers were spent at 8,500 feet in a cabin that was a cow camp, and our, other times were spent at the headquarters, but there was leases and cattle kind of all over the place that everybody was expected to manage. So the amount of responsibility and the amount of chores that my brother and I had to do and had to manage at a young age, I think helped. But to answer your question, there was an itch that I couldn't scratch, Rob, for a very long time, and I didn't know what it was. And it was that I was a visionary, and I was born with it. And I don't know if my parents quite knew how to. Probably to this day, still don't know how to deal with it. But being born with that type of DNA and kind of trapped in a small valley or trapped
Yeah.
in one industry, I didn't know how to focus myself accordingly until I got out of there and went to college and started, expanding into territories that I had zero experience in.
Okay, so great childhood, but definitely wasn't what you saw yourself doing as an adult. So you go off, your horizons are expanded, I guess you could say. Um, I think, as I recall, got married, 2 kids, and then that was when you started your entrepreneurial journey, like right then. Is that correct?
There was a little in between there, and so
Okay.
yes, left the ranch, and you guys will appreciate this from a wealth management standpoint. But I love the ranching industry and the real authentic. I mean, it's made me who I am today and whatnot. But it's a lifestyle instead of a business, and so there is just so much regulation, and it's just so hard. I saw that at an early age, and I thought, man, this is just not that I was afraid of anything hard. I wanted more, and I think at the end of the day, everybody loves to make money, but I saw that there was other opportunities to go make money in a different way. So yeah, left the ranch. I was actually the first athlete in my high school to get a Division I full ride sports scholarship of any kind. So I went and played volleyball
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of years and ended up getting really sick and having to transfer into another college, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And that's where I met Mert, my now husband. We've been together 28 years, been married, 23, 22, and have 2 young kids now. But met Mert, and from there, after I graduated college with an animal science degree,
Mm-hmm.
I went on to be a first grade school teacher. So this is a lot of the story that people don't know. It's an extraordinary part of my life. I loved this part of my life. I do think that it helps make me successful even today. But I went on to be a school teacher for first grade for 4 years, and I loved it. And I was a successful teacher. But what ended up happening is Mert and I moved to a community that didn't have teaching jobs, and we moved to a community that definitely was 2 income. And he was a horseshoer or a farrier at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and so I had to find something that I needed, that I could do at home while raising kids and help support the family by bringing in a little bit of money. So somebody suggested a medical billing company.
Yeah.
And I remember the day exactly. My mom and I were sitting out on the porch having a glass of wine, and some good friends of ours were starting it. And she's like, "Man, you should ask Jess what they're doing. I think that you would be good at it." I knew nothing of healthcare. I didn't know what a CPT code was. I didn't know what an ICD-9 back then was. ICD-9 code was. But
I don't know what
yeah, what
any
the
of that is
hell?
either.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah,
what the right?
yeah.
And you guys need to understand, I didn't grow up with computers. I didn't grow up in a tech savvy family at all. And this was an incredibly tech savvy environment. But why not? Let's tackle it. So I did. I started a medical billing company out of my house. And this was a house that was this rundown. It wasn't rundown. We were very proud of it, but it was a mobile home that was on an acre, and we could have our horses and we could have some of our livestock. But it wasn't much of a home, but it was a good start. So I started the company out of there. My first 5 employees were in there. So what I figured out when I got started was I was very good at solving problems, and I could see an industry that one was just very disparate and broken. And meaning like the way that the physicians would communicate with me, the way the insurance companies would communicate with the physician, there was just so much non-transparency due to no integration of systems. And so I started building systems and the ability for my physicians to have full transparency with me. And so I basically started hosting practice management softwares, and I built server farms inside of that mobile home. So we put an extension on that mobile home. I remember sitting on the couch with my husband telling him that it was going to cost around $17,000. And he was just, back in the day, this was
Oh,
so much money to us.
a lot
And
of money. Yeah.
I'm like, I got it. I can do it. So it's kind of a saying between us now when I go to him with another radical idea, and I'm just like, I got it, Mert. I can do it. And he just rolls his eyes because he just knows, don't stop her. But so anyway, we put in an extension on that house. I ended up bringing in my first 5 employees in there, and we built server farms. And again, this is going to age me again, but I built point to points to host those practice management software. And if you all know what point to points are, they're very, very expensive internet connections. So this was before internet was what it is today. But what I saw was the ability for my physicians to see their full scope of business, right? I was a big advocate on where the dollar started for them and paying attention to that, and not just being this medical billing company that was, just churning this thing in the background and not having any type of integration or communication or inspiration to the business. And so that allowed me to have that just communication. It also built a huge sticky. And I didn't realize that sticky was as sticky as it was until the industry kind of put me into a position of hockey stick growth. But anyway, so we started doing this. We became very successful at it. We also became very successful at just revenue cycle management, which is medical billing, just a sexy term for it. And I just became known for being a very trustworthy, authentic medical billing owner that physicians could trust. And I ended up building a rapport of clients that I had all the way until the end, that stuck with me for the long haul. So that's how it started. I can keep going on where it went, or you can ask me questions. But
No, I think so. Obviously, you're an incredible salesperson to be able to convince all these physicians, your physicians, to trust you, working a server farm out of an extension on your home.
yeah, yeah,
that's
with point to points. Let's not forget.
unbelievable. I also think
And
it's interesting that you were talking about, the cow calf operation, all that, just too much regulatory issues and stuff, and then you end up in the medical industry, which I
right?
perceive as being very regulatory intensive as well, but obviously different from the standpoint. Certainly wasn't a lifestyle type decision. This was more of a true entrepreneurial journey towards being able to really build something pretty awesome and big.
No, it's so true. I could build a business off of it, but don't be fooled. I mean, it was a total gladiator warrior mindset, and I don't know if I still know how to operate any different today.
Hmm.
That's how I was raised, was pick up the sword and fight, right? Like there was nothing that couldn't be accomplished. There was no ocean that was scary or dark enough that didn't have a compass on it that I felt I couldn't pioneer. And that came from how, I was raised. But yeah, I jumped right into another very hard, even describe. There
Yeah,
was days I wish I would have gone back to the ranching world. Let's just put it
I'm
that way.
sure. And so
Yeah,
I'm
as my
curious.
brother's riding around with his
Yeah,
kids and,
yeah.
having this most beautiful romantic lifestyle. Here's Jess, I loved my physicians, but sometimes they're very difficult people. No offense to any of you listening to that, but
They know who they are. They know the
yeah,
difficult.
exactly. And so, just there was days where I was like, man, I think I'd much rather go stare at a cow butt and deal with cows than this. But it was still fun. It was highly intense, and I'll talk to a lot of that. When you ask me about the emotion of being an entrepreneur, but I did put myself right into what I call a high hamster wheel, high adrenaline industry that really never allowed rest. It never allowed for, our toes were just on the line 24/7 for performance. So it was a very intense world that we lived in.
Okay, so a couple of questions along those lines. First of all, I mean, you've clearly explained to us, where you get your drive. Okay,
Yeah.
but I don't think you've completely described to me what your motivation was. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, you couldn't have a teaching job. You loved it, but you couldn't do it where you had moved. So you started this, and then you just go with this drive. But what was, do you feel like there was a motivation there beyond that? Like, that you wanted to get to certain financial levels, or that you just wanted to get to certain employee levels, that you wanted to have this level of success? What
100%.
was the motivation?
All of the above, right?
Okay.
I would say from the teaching aspect of things, I loved teaching, but what drove me crazy was that I could look at that pay scale and say, I can teach for 20 some odd years and this is all I'm going to make.
Hmm.
Like there was just, and my dad would always be like, man, Jess, that's great money. You have benefits. You work 180 days out of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is shit. Like there's so much more to the quality of life that I wanted and the lifestyle that I wanted for my family. And I just like, again, it's all embedded in that drive. It's all embedded in the Jess factor. But at the end of the day, I didn't mind working hard to go make money. I love to make money. And I think money is like a 4-letter word in our industries, in our world today. And it's just not. And especially coming from a woman, right? Like you should be, home raising kids, whatever it may be. I was like, man, I can do both.
Yeah, you did.
I can raise kids. And I should say this is that we had no help when I started PMDS. Like I was still raising kids. I gave birth to my second when I was, started PMDS. I had some employees when I had him. I literally can remember the days of little bouncy things right here by my leg. I'd be on a phone talking and I'd be managing kids and the whole deal. Like we didn't have a nanny until later. We didn't have a lot of help. So my husband was a huge help, but he also had a full-time job. So he would take the kids a certain amount of days and then they were in the office with me other days. And I'll tell you on what ends up happening after the mobile home here, but I ended up hiring a school teacher for all of our employees that had young children, and they ended up bringing their kids to the office, and we had a dedicated room where a school teacher watched them all day. So
Just
that's
amazing
how
problem
that's
solving is
how
what that is.
family
Yeah.
driven I was too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's so cool. So yeah, and man, I'm so glad you explained it that way, because I was thinking about that this morning. Before we came on, that I mean, so many people just don't get the entrepreneurial journey and what the true motivation is. And you say money is a lot of times they're like, oh well, you're just doing it for the money, and that's not. But the thing is, what you just described was the ability to make money with a certain level of freedom. I
That's
think that
correct.
that's probably what gets missed when non-entrepreneurs look at entrepreneurs. They don't understand that. It's like, okay, yeah, I could see pay scale, that all works good, and you can have a good life that way. But man, I can go do this, and I can create something out of nothing,
Exactly.
and through that I can provide a great pay and great life for a lot of employees, and at the same time I can create that for myself without having to necessarily put in hour after hour and be on this pay scale thing. You can actually reach for something better, which gives you money, but then money gives you freedom, gives you the ability to have a nanny, and do other things like that. And I
Well,
just
and I don't think I
yeah,
knew the word wealth back then, right? I didn't know what
yeah.
it meant to build wealth. I don't think I knew what generational wealth meant. I still didn't, Rob, until after I sold. And when I say after I sold, it wasn't the day after I sold, it
Hmm.
was years after I sold. That was never taught to me. I never had anybody in my family that's ever reached this level of wealth, success, or money, however you want to put it. So that's another whole part of that emotional journey of
Yeah.
getting through that and how to maintain it and it's a whole nother job. But
It creates a
I
whole new
think
problem in some ways.
it's a whole new problem. And back to your point though, is part of my drive was, and I figured that out today, because today, I mean, money isn't necessarily what drives me
Mhm.
anymore. It's building something and having something to do. I think after I sold, that was the biggest pivotal time for me. It was actually almost devastating. I ended up getting sick. I lost my dad to cancer.
Mm.
It just was like this gray time. And people were just looking at me like, Jesus, Jess, you figured it out. Like you can ride off in the sunset. You've reached all these goals. And I just remember being like, I don't know what to do, because so much of that had been taken away. It was part of my identity. It was part of all of that. All right. Everything that nobody wants to talk about, it absolutely is. And so I have a lot to say to entrepreneurs that are on their way to either wanting to exit or have exited, and how we deal with that. But back to where I was in that, phase of, we're still at the mobile home and I'm still scaling at small rates, but we're growing and I'm raising kids. I loved to build, Rob. I love to build companies. I have a skill at it. I have a skill. I think I look back in college and the only straight A's I got was in economics.
Yeah.
Now, it was an animal science degree, and I had a ag business minor, so it allowed me to dabble in some of the business classes, and I got straight A's. Like I could figure out budgets, and it was just something I was kind of born with and I
Mm.
loved. And so business has always been a thing for me, but I didn't know it, and I didn't know how to articulate that until I got older.
So another thing from this stage that I hear, and you tell me whether I'm on track or not. Wasn't a lot of balance going on. I mean, you were all in, girl, on this deal. You were so focused, and that I want to hear. I want to hear your take on balance versus passion for what you're trying to achieve.
I had none. I had
Yeah.
zero balance, guys. I picked up that gladiator sword. I was fighting all day long. We had no money to do this. We had maxed out whatever credit we were allowed to have in our 20s, which wasn't much. I went to my parents and I said, and they didn't have much either, right? Ranching is a very asset rich, cash poor business.
Yes.
And I said, hey, I need $75,000 to buy this first server. It was in $40,000 chunks that I needed to do this. And my parents handed me a credit card and said, here you go, pay it back with interest. And so I did it. But that's how strapped we were. That's how risky I was. That's
That's
the danger that
crazy.
I entered.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, we
right.
had no cash.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford milk, Rob, when we started this. I remember, I mean, we were so happy still, right? We were so happy in our life, and my husband was a farrier, and I just thought that that's how life was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. So no balance. So now my question is, what do you think about that? Do you think that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is balance something we should be seeking early on in our journey, or is it just not possible?
All right. So I'm gonna give you the authentic Jess here. I
I
don't
want
think
to
it's
hear it.
possible when
Go.
yeah, I don't think it's possible when you have the drive that I had. I don't
I
think I would
agree
have
with you.
listened to you. I think that the work life balance, this whole theory of work life balance, is sometimes just fluff and frankly BS. Because when you're an entrepreneur and you have a drive and you are trying to go somewhere, you have an objective. So I'll say my answer to you is, how fast do you want to scale? How fast do you want to go? If you want to go slow, balance it out, right? Live life. I get it. Don't get me wrong. People should smell the roses along the way. Do I think that there's moments that I missed in my kid's life because I was present, but I wasn't present?
Hmm.
Absolutely. Do I have regret about it? I do, but we were such a close knit family that my husband balanced me. So I think if I had balance for you, it's who's your support system to get you through something like this? That was my balance. And Mert to this day is my balance. I am 180-degree difference in him, in from personality to energy to everything. I spin circles around him, but he is my level of balance. He helped raise the kids. He and I did it together. We ate dinner together every night. one of us would take the kids to school every day. Those were some of the rules and balance, as you're saying, that we established that was part of this. But do I call it something that we really focused on? No, we just made it a priority as if it weren't any different than running the company.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that in order to have a very high level of success, that it's very, very difficult to have a top level of success all the way across everything that's important to you at the
I
same
do.
time. I think certainly there are stages, and that's where we'll probably go next. There are periods of time where, I mean, if you're maxed out on credit cards on the servers you just use about, I mean, I'm sorry, but you got to make that work. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
there's,
was all in.
yeah, that's right. You just got to do it, and there's going to be some things that go off to the side, and you have to do it at an excellent, outstanding level because of the competition out there and just all the different risks that are associated with it. Period. End of story. I
That's
feel that
right.
way, and I feel the same way. I feel like certainly there have been times when I wasn't the best husband or the best parent or the best at some of the other things because I felt like I just really had to focus on making my business a success. And then there are other stages where you can certainly other things that are very important to you can become phenomenal in your life. You know.
Well, and I agree. I mean, and I was so fortunate, you guys. I mean, look at the divorce rates of serial
Yeah.
visionaries and entrepreneurs. I mean, it's incredibly high. I consider myself so blessed to have married the man that I married. But guys, it wasn't without work, and it wasn't without conversation, and it wasn't without commitment. We were both in this, and we were both committed to each other to make sure that this happened. And our family was still number one importance. But you're right, I had to succeed. So there were times when I had to travel and be on the road, and we got through it. So
Yeah.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so you talked a little second ago about the hockey stick growth. I mean, obviously, you found yourself in a really good position
Yeah.
within medical billing at a time with a system, processes, servers, people, and all that kind of stuff that did give you a really great opportunity, and you were able to take advantage of that. Talk to us a little bit just about that.
So, absolutely. And I didn't know the sophisticated words or the way that I articulate myself. 20, hindsight's always 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I did believe was I was swimming in a red ocean, but I didn't look at it from a competitive standpoint, Rob. I looked at it from a solution standpoint. I try to teach my leadership teams and my leaders this today. You have to build what the market wants, not what you think the market wants, what the actual market wants. And what the market wanted was what I was building. And I would literally have conversations with my physicians and say, hey, what are the biggest pain points here? What are the biggest constraints? And I was just good, and I still am, of just knocking it out, getting it out of the way. Let's fix it. Let's move on. Let's go. I built something that nobody in the industry was doing. And I was one of the very first companies in the United States inside that mobile home that took Sage Software, if you know who Sage is,
Sure.
their healthcare division. I'm the one that figured out how to take it remote. So I built a remote desktop protocol or an RDP server, which back in the day, you guys, this was in 2006, 2007. This stuff wasn't even mentioned. It wasn't even cool. And I had a team at Sage that literally thought I was crazy. They probably still do today, but I said, hey, we need to get rid of this disparate system. Like, this is just a joke. So how do we fix this? So we built the RDP protocol for Sage and started hosting it. And that was the server farm that we built. And they didn't even have the technology to do it, but we figured out how to bolt on or build the technology that allowed us to take that PM system virtual. I had attorneys come after me from Sage. I had them tell me that I was, dialing into the back of proprietary software. I just tried to tell them, please hold my beer. Don't come after me. I swear to God, here in about 2 months, you're going to want to talk to me more because I'm figuring something out. And indeed, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we differentiated ourselves in a very competitive landscape But again, I wasn't even looking at the competition or worried about it. I was more focused on what the market needed. And then I realized what I had done, right? So I had put myself in a situation that was the most ideal situation. I could not have been in a better place when the EMR boom came out. So the electronic medical record and Obamacare and
Yeah.
all of that,
Yeah, I
where
figured.
healthcare
I
kind of got
figured. So
put
this is
on
right before HIPAA and all that kind of stuff.
right before it.
Yeah.
Right
And
before. I
then
built all
HIPAA
this.
happens, and all these physicians are like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be responsible for this at all. I'm gonna hire Jess, right?"
That's it.
Yeah.
Or yeah, and the adoption rate that they were put on, like these poor physicians had an adoption rate that was almost impossible for
Yeah.
them to hit their milestones. It was near impossible. What we had built gave them the opportunity to basically adopt, pivot, adapt, and adopt within less than 30 days. I mean, we had the instrument and the vehicle to do it, and we had the ability to do it, and we had the skill to do it. And so this was hockey stick growth number one. And
Mhm.
this is when we realized there was no way we were going to survive in this house. And I needed my next office. So still wasn't making a ton of money. I don't think I knew how to make money either. I never looked at a profit and loss, frankly, didn't care. I was like, man, just pay bills. Mert and I were making what we needed to make, but I still wasn't bringing home a ton of profit to the family yet, but I knew that I was committed in a different way. But anyway, I went and found, so I grew up in aviation. My dad was a pilot. He flew the A6 Intruder for the Marine Corps, and he never stopped flying. And so I grew up in a 185, 182. That's how we checked cows and whatnot. So I always just had a love for aviation. So I was like, man, I'm going to go to the airport. They have big commercial, industrial type buildings. I'm going to go look for office space at the airport. I've heard it's cheap. So I did. I went and found 2,500 square feet for 25 cents a square foot. There was a motorcycle shop living in this space. I'll never forget walking through the space with the landlord. And he was one looking at me like, what the hell are you doing here? First of all. Two, this is like so gross, you guys. There's grease. He had been living in there. There was a shower. I didn't care. It was 2,500 square feet of warehouse space, and I needed to do some HVAC work, and I could just see the walls we needed to put up. I said, I'll take it. So I took it with zero contracting experience, zero ability to even probably solve in this space. But I went back to my 5 employees and I said, who has handy husbands? And sure enough, right? They all had handy husbands. And so between my husband and their husbands, guys, we put up 1,500 square foot of walls, office space walls. We ran all of our own Cat5 cable. We built our own server room. We brought in the internet. We did everything ourselves. We painted like everything that you can imagine putting up, an office space. And we did it. And so that was our second office. And that's where our next, our servers went to. And it allowed us to now expand into, numerous employees. And I want to say my first 12 employees were in there.
Mhm.
But what ended up happening was just such rapid growth there from there on forward, Rob. Like this is really, as an entrepreneur, where I was not seasoned, I wasn't trained, I didn't know how to be an effective leader. People were coming at us left and right, and I was the leader that said yes to everything. Yes, I can solve your problems. Yes, we can take that multi-million-dollar contract. Yes, we can do this. And my team is just looking at me going, oh my God, it's like this woman's going to kill us. And I did. I had a revolving door of people for a long time.
Or you were going to burn out yourself.
Yeah, but that's an excuse in my world, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, off we went. I just kept bringing in more skill, more talent, more people. And I looked at the people that were leaving as like, hey, just wasn't meant to be. I'm meant to find somebody else. That was totally the wrong approach, but it's all I had at the time. And I just started upping our game, of bringing in the talent that could support this level of growth and this level of invention and innovation. There was nobody else doing what we had done. So now we not only hosted the practice management software, we now hosted an EMR. And the amount of compliance that came with that, I was completely oblivious to. Wasn't paying attention. God forbid the government's listening right now, but there was times where I was like, there was just, we didn't have it together. And so I remember laying in bed one night and I looked over at Mert and I said, I'm literally taking backup tapes home with me in my purse. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. I need the next level solution. And that next level solution was going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Rob, I was already so committed. How do you not get yourself out of this? I mean, the compliance was on us, HIPAA was on us.
Yeah.
Every facet of the adoption and the regulation that went with it was on us. And so I went to the bank and I just threw out my financials and I said, I have no idea how much you'll give me, but I need a line of credit and I need to go and I need to go now. And God bless, they gave us our first $150,000 line of credit and that bought our next round of equipment and off we went.
Okay. So you talked about a little bit of the employee journey, and I've heard this a little bit before. So first of all, I don't a whole lot of entrepreneurs get stuck after that first growth level. Okay, and I think, and we'll argue back and forth. You can disagree with me because I might be wrong, but I think that what a lot of times causes them to kind of tap out, like right there, is that it takes certainly takes a different attitude, but I think it takes a different employee, a different team to do it at the next level. You said that you cycled through a lot of people and, that maybe that wasn't good, but then you also said that, hey, you ended up hiring some very different people. And when you got to that next level, I hear that sometimes. I think sometimes that's a real key. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree, Rob.
Okay.
I look back on it and yes, I needed to be a better leader, but at the same time, I don't think I would have changed anything. We just were growing at such a rapid rate that we were outgrowing our people. And I truly believe that companies will outgrow their staff if there's not a lot of continuous improvement minded employees there, right? That are embracing that culture of rapid fire, embracing that culture of change and pivot. If they're not willing and wanting to do that, the company outgrows them extremely fast. And I think that that's exactly what happened. And then I started acquiring talent that I thought was just, guys, it was so out of my league.
That's what you want, though. You surround yourself with really smart people, right?
I did. I went to who ended up becoming my COO, and I went to him. He and I had worked together at Sage Software for years, and he was probably making 350,000, and this was in the early 2000s. So that's a lot of money. And his entire life was being run through it. And I went to him and I said, I need you to come on board with me. And I'm only going to pay you 100,000. But I promise you, this is going to be a journey like you've never done before. And he said, let me think about it. And 2 weeks later, he called me and said, Jess, let's do it.
Awesome.
And so that was a very, very big time for me in my career, was bringing him on. And just like you said, rising, constantly bringing in that talent that was going to take us to the next level. But being willing to have the courage to do it, and still not making, at this point, a ton of profit inside the organization, but on our way.
Okay. And then somewhere in here, you start getting to where you have the talent, you're starting to get scale, and you're starting to become attractive to, some larger players that eventually you get purchased. So tell us a little bit.
That's correct. So we expanded out of that motorcycle shop, that 2,500 square feet, into over 10,000 square feet immediately. We ended up taking the entire line of commercial space. It was hilarious, guys. We put Cat 5 cabling all the way down. It was crazy. But I ended up taking over that. And then I realized right about then that, hey, I've saturated this community. This was a small community. I've saturated the labor pool. I didn't have a very conducive airport to bring talent in. We were still somewhat local, yet expanding regional, but I wanted national expansion and it was coming at me. By now it was, like you said, we were attractive to some big players and it was coming towards us. So we ended up signing a huge surgeon group out of Denver, Colorado. And when I went to Denver with my COO, I'm like, this is it. This is where we need to be. There's a huge international airport. I could already see that we were going to probably be overseas at one point. And this allowed us to travel there. And this also allowed me to recruit talent into a community that was just a lot more conducive than from where the headquarters was. So we put boots on the ground. We ended up signing that surgeon group, put boots on the ground there, and then ended up expanding into a very large office space there in the Denver Tech Center. And from there, we started signing larger surgeon groups. We always played in the ambulatory space. And we started, now there's another phase to what happened inside of the industry too. I could see the consolidation happening of hospitals buying due to the EMR boom and everything that went on. Hospitals were now buying ambulatory clinics, general practitioners. That one patient-centric home was a very, big term that was being floated around at the time. So that consolidation drove me to say, we need hospitals. Like, the ambulatory space is what we're really, really good at. Nobody wants to dabble in this because it was hard work, right? Low margin, but we had figured out how to really drop money to the bottom line in it. So I bought a one-way ticket to Nashville, Tennessee. Now, granted, we were in Denver by now. I had really great staff. And I bought a one-way ticket to Nashville. I remember telling my team, I'm like, I don't know when I'll be back, but I'm going to go knock on some doors of hospitals. And we better start, figuring this out because we've built something that they need and they don't know we exist yet. So I did. I had one meeting, and I had a meeting with a guy in a bar in Nashville who I could probably call today and he'd be my pal. And he said, Jess, what are you doing here? And I said, I need to meet some hospitals. Who do you know? He got me 3 meetings the next day. And so this is how crazy I was. And so I ended up sitting in the waiting room of these. No, these weren't the hospitals. These were corporations. This is where the corporate headquarters were of these hospitals. But I ended up sitting in their conference area for hours to try to take these meetings. I had 2 ditch me that he had set me up, never came down. I had 1 that took the meeting. And her name was Monica from a hospital system called Regional Care Healthcare Partners. And I ended up spending an hour and a half with her, and I gave her my pitch, and I just had a conversation with her, and she very kindly said, hey, Jess, there's just no opportunity here. I just don't see what it is. And I said, well, you just don't know it yet, but it's here, right? It's coming, and you're going to want to call me. A year and a half later, she calls.
Wow.
And she says, hey, Jess, are you still wanting to do this? And I said, yes. What can we do? She says, I have a hospital for you out of Washington. It's very rural, which was right up my alley. And why don't you go show me what you can do? So I took a team. By now we were overseas. I took a team and I said, let's go on site, guys. We're going to do a free analysis. We're going to show them the rate of return, the ROI that they can have, and every opportunity that they don't know exists right now for shaving off costs and bringing us in. So we did, and we got the job. And then from there, we started getting lots of regional care hospitals jobs, right? We started getting their hospitals after hospitals after hospitals. And then I would say this was probably hockey stick growth number 3 and 4. Other hospitals started calling. We started to become the solution for the ambulatory arm, which was kind of the necessary evil of the hospitals for not only hosting practice management and EMR systems, but the ability now to dial in. So Rob, we now had gone even further. We were a fully agnostic company that worked in multiple different platforms. So if they had already adopted, we had to have the ability to adopt with them. So we performed inside of their system. So we could now see that eventually we weren't going to have to do any hosting. We didn't want to, right? We wanted to get out of that because the adoption rates were so high. But we were still seeing hospital systems, large surgeon groups, large ambulatory groups that didn't have their systems. And so we had the ability to still host. But those systems that were coming to us, or clients that were coming to us that already had a system, we then had to have the talent of saying, yes, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. So we ended up having to build a team that had talent in over 7 different healthcare systems, which was, that's pretty much impossible by itself.
I would think so, yes.
But
it's
we
so
did it.
critical because, and again, I don't know your industry very well, but my perception is that today, for instance, there are very few physicians just operating, on their own. I mean, it just seems like the hospital systems own everything. at this point.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
so having to get yourself into the actual hospital systems, that one-way ticket to Nashville was really important. And you
Yeah.
recognize that at the time, obviously, making it such a high priority and so far
Yeah.
ahead. And then, yeah, today there's no question. I mean, the hospital systems drive everything now, best I can tell.
So it's such a critical moment, and it's actually something I speak on stage about, but my team guys did not see the opportunity. Told me I was crazy again, but it was like, Jess, there's just no opportunity for it. Here Jess is just being kind of, radical visionary again. I'm like, no, this is coming. We need to be prepared for it. I was kind of a year and a half in advance, but yes, you were right. And so here it all came. My team didn't think I was crazy anymore. And we became fully agnostic in multiple different hospital systems, multiple different platforms. And this is probably when the real shit hit the fan for me. Like, as a leader, you were talking about the burnout. I had been in the hospital with 2 bleeding ulcers. I could never figure out how to get over my skis, or I shouldn't say over, because I was always over my skis in debt at this point. And by the way, I was a sole owner. I bootstrapped this entire thing, obviously, but I still was a sole owner at this point. And the stress of that, I didn't have the skill to know how to make money and profit. And I was just operating, churning, constantly, reinvesting, and it finally caught up. And so that stress of that and me not knowing how to effectively lead, constantly needing new people in Denver and who was going to be our leaders. And I mean, I just wasn't even running meetings right. And so I did. I literally I almost flew that company into a wall. I could feel us unraveling. It was a very painful time. I had an advisory board, which, by the way, I put that advisory board in place years prior to Denver. And it was they worked for me for free, and they still are my good friends today. But I remember going to them in utter tears and saying, I can't do this anymore. I need help. I had reached my level as a CEO that I didn't know how to operationally function. So they suggested, well, Jess, why don't you bring in, a high level CEO, give him some stock, and, let's take some chips off the table for you, and let's get you home with your family, and let's get you healthy. So I did. And let me tell you something, Rob, I hired the biggest wolf in sheep's clothing that I could ever hire. And thank God I had put him on a 90-day, come in here and let me see what you're like before I had given any stock or whatnot, because I had basically sold my soul to the devil, and I figured it out. He had accidentally carbon copied me on an email to some investors that he was looking to bring in. It was terrible. Needless to say, he was basically escorted out of the company, and I had to go take over my company again. And this was a very rough place because my team had already jumped loyalty. And that was really when I just couldn't believe it. I was like, you guys are my friends. Like, holy crap, And so I had to come in and make some huge moves. And you want to talk courage? I remember calling my dad, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to go in and give a presentation to my own company that I freaking own. And I'm shaking. I was crying. And he's like, this is not the daughter I raised. Get your shit together. And I was like, okay, all right. So I did.
Yeah.
And that was a huge time in my life. And that was when I joined a CEO roundtable group, a mentor group. And that leader is who walked into my life and changed it forever. And he basically said, I love you, Jess. You're a phenomenal leader, but you suck here, here, and here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a mirror up in front of you, and I'm going to tell you that the bulk of this is your fault. And that was really hard for me to hear. Like, I didn't take it well. I didn't really talk to him for 2 weeks. I went and licked my wounds. And I came back and I said, you're 100% right. And what do I need to do? He says, you got to put a system in place. You don't have a system that you can lean on. It's like how the military uses a system. There's a system for things to fall into. There's a system for them to lean in on, how to make decisions. And I didn't have it. And so I started putting some systems in place. I read some books. I hijacked some of the stuff that I had fired that, fancy CEO with. And I started running meetings, and I started putting in about 25% of what I teach today. And it changed my life. So for the next 4 years, at my company, we started scaling at rates again that I had never knew was possible.
Wow.
With full software implementations. I had finally put the dream team together. I had stopped diving down the leadership pipeline. I had really kind of allowed them, I had empowered them and blossomed them into a team that allowed them to make decisions accordingly. Now I was not traveling to Denver every other week. I was traveling to Denver once a month, once a quarter. I was living life in bliss. And I'll tell you, the second pivotal thing I did was hire a fractional CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And I hired a CFO. We're still very good friends today. And I said, I have no idea what the hell I'm looking at. How do I do this? He built me a forecasting model. He allowed me to make decisions that I kind of like, I could make effective and better decisions with, because I knew the levers and how to turn and what the trigger points were of the company. Sure. And I'd flown by the seat of my pants up until this point. And
I can't
this is when we
you
started.
got this far without the systems and without, because, I'm a finance guy, right? So I'm just going, oh my gosh, she didn't have good books until now, pretty much.
No.
Like,
I had a controller. She was fantastic, but no, like,
yeah,
it was brute force, Rob. It was hand-to-hand combat.
That's incredible that you made it through all those stages.
Yeah.
And then got the systems in place. And, I assume that, with the fractional CFO came a little bit of profitability too.
Oh, he was like,
yeah,
Jesus, Jess, I can't believe you've been doing this long. And I remember feeling so dumb, and I remember him saying, you aren't supposed to know it all. And it was at that moment, I had always beat myself up. Like, I didn't have a business degree. I didn't have an MBA. I had pure mountain training and military, whatever you want to call it. And I always used to beat myself up. And then it was at that moment I realized, and you'll hear me say this in my keynotes, they don't teach this shit in an MBA, right? Like, you cannot come out of school knowing all of this. And so it's what empowers me to do what I do today. Is there's so much that I learned that you can't get from a textbook. You cannot get from a professor. You actually have to go through it, or have somebody that's gone through it that knows how to have those communications with you appropriately. And so, yeah, the last 4 years was bliss. I stopped traveling to Denver. We started making money. I started living off a forecasting model and scorecards and the system that we put into play, and everybody was living life. And my largest client, which was Monica,
that
hospital system that I flew to Nashville, Tennessee, and she told me there was no opportunity. She called me into Nashville and said, Jess, we need to meet with you. And it was like the next day I'd catch a flight that night. And I looked at my team. I'm like, what'd you guys do? Like, are we in trouble? And they're like, no, Jess. Like, I'm like, are we getting fired? They want to fly me to Nashville tonight. And my team's like, all blood's drained, we don't know. And so it dawned on me then, I was like, man, I think they're going to want to buy me. Sure enough, we sat at a coffee shop and they said, Jess, we want to buy you. And I said, no. I didn't say no. I said it very kindly, but I said, I don't think I'm ready. And I don't know if you guys can put an offer on the table that at my age is going to make me feel ready to go. So first letter of intent came in, second letter of intent came in. I still said it, no, just wasn't good enough. And then the third letter of intent came in, backed by Apollo for 26 times EBITDA, and all cash deal. No earnout.
That's up there.
And so I sold very successfully. 60 days later, I transitioned the company for 8 months. And then at 41, I didn't have anything to do. Wow. And that was just another pivotal time. So I'll pause there.
Ways, I'd say that happened almost too fast. And my experience is when you have that kind of success that young, and then you're kind of done, that can be a little scary too.
This is where the gray time entered. Here. There was also my COO, who was my best friend at the time, ended up just annihilating me. We are not friends today. It was one of, I'm going to say, of the top 3 things in my life that I've gone through that were tough. That is in that bucket. At the same time that was happening, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He got very sick, and it took a while for them to diagnose him. He was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, and it was moving at a very rapid rate. And so, thank God, I was able to go spend time with him. My brother had gotten in a very tragic accident. He had got kicked in the chest by a horse, and he was in ICU for a week and in the hospital for 2 weeks. And so it just was one of those moments where I was like, I have more money in the bank than I could ever imagine. And we bought this. By the way, we moved to Texas because the company that bought me didn't want to employ anyone in California, which I don't blame them. And I didn't want to move to Colorado. So we moved to Weatherford, Texas, bought a beautiful ranch. And here I am with this beautiful family, successfully married, gorgeous kids, gorgeous ranch, money, millions in the bank.
Yeah.
And I've never come close to depression, but it was great. Like it was just it was not a good time for me. And Brian, my old CFO, was like, girl, I don't even want to talk to you. I cannot believe this is even happening. Like, Jesus, Jess, people strive for this their entire life and maybe reach this 1% of the time. And I just didn't know even how to I didn't even know how to emotionally respond. And so anyway, my dad, I was able to spend a year with him, and I was the one in the family that could kind of go to the hospital the most. And so I'm so grateful for that time because I was able to spend with him before he passed. But I started feeling sick right before when we knew he wasn't going to make it. I started having pain that I couldn't like put an identity to it. And I just started rapidly going downhill. And so I actually started showing signs of Parkinson's and really rapidly declining in my health. And so I was diagnosed with a terminal autoimmune, and I ended up getting to doctors after specialists and getting diagnosed with late stage Lyme's disease. So my immune system crashed. A lot of people don't even know this part of the story, Rob. But my immune system crashed, and I literally spent the next 2 years recovering in a way that I never thought that would ever happen to me. I was so tough, and the walls came down. But anyway, I'm good now, fully recovered. Autoimmune's gone. I mean, again, accomplished things that most people never accomplish, but the bottom fell out after I sold my company. So,
well, I really commend you just for sharing that, because obviously we get the opportunity to talk at a real level with a lot of folks that find themselves in a really similar situation after they sell,
yeah.
And I don't think it has to be that way, but a lot of times it is that way. That's kind of what I've found. And when you have so much success so quickly and you're still young and still, have something to provide to this world, and yet you don't know what it is, like, well, I've seen that really take some people down pretty hard. And as like, we're financial planners, so my answer has always been, well, we just need to plan, right? We just need to think through all these stages and think about what's on the other side, as I like to say all the time. And I don't know, that's kind of the way I think of getting through something like that, is to do some pre-planning preparation. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say with that. If you had to do it again, I guess obviously you sell. My gosh, at that level, I mean, you sell. There's no question. But how do you think the rest of us can prepare ourselves better for the other side of a transaction?
So to your point, my husband and I, we did planning, but according to us, right? Again, this was just brand new territory for us. Nobody in our family had ever put in, that many millions in a bank and been that successful. And so we didn't have anybody really to talk to. Had we known better, we even went to some wealth advisory firms, and they were so helpful. They were so helpful, Rob, but we couldn't process, right? I think it was due to our age and our lack of knowledge. We couldn't process. I couldn't process what it meant. And I'm going to tell you straight up, when you have an unhealthy relationship with money, like I kind of do, because of how I was raised. We were raised with not a lot of cash, and all of a sudden here it is in this abundance. And I've worked my ass off for 15 years to get here. And holy crap, this overbearing control, which I've never been a control freak, but this overbearing feeling of, oh my God, I could never accomplish this again. I can't let this wealth go away. That was like emotion number one. pulling from a portfolio to live on your lifestyle on. And when that lifestyle is gone, meaning like it ran all of our trucks, all of our fuel, all of our phones, all of our basically our lifestyle and our expense, when that was over, holy, like the realization of looking at your family and going, we spend what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we got to pull this from the portfolio every month. And that's just a whole different feeling of watching that come chunk away. So that was happening. My dad was dying, my brother had been hurt, and now I was sick. And I'm living in this foreign country called Texas, right? Like I fit in like a glove in Texas, and we bought this beautiful ranch, but it was
It's
just boom,
different.
like this wad of crap landed on me. And so I think that the emotional preparation should have been number one for me. I don't know how somebody could have prepared me though, Rob. I think that the biggest secret I could tell you is no one should have ever let me not have something to do.
Mm,
So I think my biggest piece of advice to everyone is one, get you a wealth advisor like Schultz Wealth, right? He's exactly right. You have to make a plan so that you aren't like me and paranoid, like how do you live and pull out this, from the portfolio. But two, when you are a true serial visionary, you need to embrace it, admit it to yourself, call yourself a workaholic, whatever you want to call it your identity. But I promise you, when that laptop and that phone don't need you anymore, it's a very pivotal time after you've gone on about a 6-month vacation. Go enjoy your vacation, but come back and have something to do. I wish I would have had something to do to just dig into. I started building like Excel spreadsheets for my kids' homework. I started like being a school mom for the first time in my life. And my kids were like, hey, mom, we love you, but there's the door.
yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
And I've had a very successful marriage, but if I was ever going to have a trying time in our marriage, it was right then because of my I was lost. I
Mm,
was just lost. And so my old CFO called me and said, hey, Jess, I know you're bored. I know you're treading water over there. I think you're crazy that you even want to think about work again, but I think you need to go back and teach leaders what you did. I don't think I realized how 1% of 1% of 1% I was. And so I did. I started studying the art of business. I started reading books and I started putting kind of the fundamentals in my head together of like, oh my God, had I known this, had I known this, had I known this. And I put together a program. I started going and getting certified in all these systems. I had the ability to go take the time to research for once and do something that no entrepreneur has time to do, right? That was the
yeah.
other guilt is like, who has time to study this stuff when you're running a company? No one. And so I did now, and I had gone through it, and I have empathy for the leader. I have empathy for the leadership team. I have empathy for all of those employees. And I'm like, man, I can do this. So I've now built a program. I call myself a strategic business guide. I work with leadership teams. I rope in with leadership teams, and I help them build and scale companies. I help them put in that system that I never put in. And I've done it from a customized way. And I meet my clients where they're at and listen to them and go, okay, I think this is exactly where we're short. I think one of my biggest success stories was, and it was one of my first clients. So it was such a neat time because I needed him and he needed me.
Yeah.
But on Christmas Eve, I got a call from a CEO, and they were a screen company and they were a manufacturer. So they didn't sell to the consumer; they sold to the vendor. And he said, "Jess, I'm in a hard way. I'm 1.2 million in the hole cash. My line of credit is depleted. My credit cards are maxed. I don't know how to get out of this." Close to like a $15 million company. And I said, okay, we got it. And I just dove in to everything. And within fast forward 7 months, we'd done a $4 million turnaround. Fast forward a year and a half, I just helped him sell to a competitor of his for 22 million. And so
Wow.
we're going to be friends for life. But that is what now empowers me. I lay my head down at night and I'm like, whew, I made it through all of this. I made it through this gray area, and I get to so significant in other people's lives. So
Wow. That's
that's
cool.
what I do today. The
Yeah.
second level of what I do, I've identified a gap when I was working with leadership teams. I identified a gap where, and I remember this when I was running my company, is you'd have these meetings, you'd put this communication protocol in, you'd put these systems in place, you put this language in place, and then it would just like, wouldn't die with the leadership team, but we didn't know how to get it trickled down.
Mm.
Well, I've noticed that in the companies that I'm working with. So I've developed an Emerge program where I work with extended leadership teams now too. And so companies hire us to come in and help bring that system to play on what I call the tomorrow's leader. So that's my story.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for getting your legs back under you like that, and finding a way to use all that incredible energy that you have, and and man, just help people and change lives like you're doing right now. That's just awesome.
Thank you.
And I can't agree with you more. The planning, and it is so hard because I'm on the other side of that, trying to explain to an entrepreneur. It's like going through the planning scenarios and going, okay, you have this amount of money, and you see that you can spend still this amount and still make this amount, and it still grows, and you're good. Go spend money.
Yeah.
I swear, sometimes just I feel like I didn't know that, like, being a wealth manager, that I'd be like trying to convince my clients to spend more money. But I spend a lot of time doing that with
Yeah.
folks that have transitioned, just going, look, you're fine. And a lot of times they just don't believe me.
So here's the funny part, right? I very rarely flew first class because, well, and let me say this, like I was this close to buying a jet inside of my company. Like I love flying. I was convinced
Yeah.
that, this was the best move for us, and it probably was. But I still didn't fly first class. I just didn't, I was being economic, I guess. I sell for how successful I sold. And I still didn't fly first class until about a year ago, Rob.
Yeah. And that's common too, and I think that's okay. And one of the misnomers is that most people, in an established family with kids, with a husband or a wife, and this kind of thing, you have a certain level that you get to that's a comfortable way of living, and it's not like just poof, all of a sudden, that changes just because you have all this money. It does.
Right.
It usually doesn't work that way.
No.
Um, if
You still
honestly,
are who you are at your
you still
core.
are who you are, and sometimes when it does, Jess, it's
Yeah.
an indication that there's probably some issues there, around
Yeah.
money. So, getting to a certain level, to a comfortable level, and then feeling good about that is great. Certainly, it's a problem, like you said, it's always a problem when we turn off the spigot, you know, of where the income was coming from, and now it's coming from a portfolio that's just totally esoteric to most people. They you just can't touch it and feel it. It's just really hard. So I
Yeah.
can certainly see that. The other thing I was going to add is and we run into this all the time, Jess, similar to what you did, is that no amount of money in the world can take the place of your health, and that health becomes our health, the health of those around us that we love and so forth, becomes such a huge indicator of our happiness, our success, and so forth. um, Good for you for digging through and getting through a tough time like that. uh, we all need to make our health a top priority if we're going to be successful.
Yeah. Don't be like me and let it catch you off guard. I never paid attention to my health. I
Yeah.
thought that I was immortal, and there's still days I think I'm immortal, but yeah, no, this one really took me down, and thank God I was in a place where I could rest and relax and bring it back up.
Yeah.
But more than that, Rob, I was in a place to pay for it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the traditional United States healthcare system was not going to cure me. I
Mhm.
had to go outside of that to a different country, to different places to go, and you had to pay cash for it. So I would thank God I was in that position to do it. But I don't think that I would have been in that unhealthy position had I paid attention to my health prior. So you were asking me about balance. I never paid attention to it appropriately. I still don't know if I would today if I did it all over again, but man, did it eat me alive because I didn't pay attention to what I call the two pillars, health and wealth now,
Mhm.
So Hindsight's always 2020, but
Always. Well,
yeah.
wow, what a great story. And really, really glad that you were able to describe to everybody so well kind of how you can help entrepreneurs and business people today. I can certainly clearly see that you have some great tools to bring to play with these folks. Um, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, you also keynote speak, I know,
I
and you
do.
have these systems and processes for folks. If somebody wants to get in contact with you to discuss your story or any of these things further, what's a really good way to reach you, Jess?
Yeah, so the best way is probably my website, which is, www.jess-stewart.com. But the other is my email. So it's Jess, Jess, at jess-stewart.com. And shoot us an email, and we'd love to just talk to you and see where you're at. And yeah, I do the leadership coaching and the extended leadership coaching and speaking engagements and workshops. And yeah, it's probably the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I encourage everybody out there to reach out to Jess if you have questions for her. If you want to discuss further with her, her skill set that she learned the hard way that maybe you can learn a little bit easier.
Amen.
Yeah, because easier can be better.
Yes.
So if you feel like you're in that position, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Also, if you know of people, or if you have a great story that you want to tell, or you know somebody that could tell a great story that can help business owners and entrepreneurs be better at what they do, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information, as well as Jess's, is in the show notes. We really appreciate y'all tuning in today, and everybody have a great week. Take care.